The panic did not begin when the photograph appeared. It began when people started asking why so many answers seemed to arrive before the questions. Because suddenly, a new rumor was racing through royal circles, entertainment blogs, and social media threads alike. An alleged cover-up. Not a criminal cover-up. Not an official investigation. Something far more damaging in the world of public image. A cover-up of a narrative. A cover-up of a growing contradiction. And according to whispers spreading faster than Meghan's team could contain them, the real story was not the photograph itself. The real story was what happened before anyone ever saw it.
Shameless grifters! This is a new low. Harry and Meghan have been blasted for their wild hypocrisy in doing speeches around the world about the dangers of the internet and social media, particularly regarding children, while splashing photographs of Archie and Lily all over social media.
This is totally bonkers. Meghan Markle has decided to use the 5th birthday of her own daughter to lash out while claiming to be the hero for protecting children from social media. We see you, Meghan, and your angry statement ain't going to shut us up.
Just think about the timeline for a second. 18 days. That was all it took. One moment Meghan was standing on an international stage warning about children being consumed by algorithms, their attention harvested, their lives shaped by forces beyond their control. The next moment, photographs of little Lilibet appeared online, instantly becoming one of the biggest royal talking points of the month. At first, supporters rushed to defend it. Critics rushed to attack it. Nothing unusual there. But then something strange happened. People started noticing that the defense appeared almost too prepared, almost too polished, almost too ready. And suddenly the question shifted. Not why were the photos posted, but why did it feel like everyone around Meghan already knew the backlash was coming? That question exploded after reports surfaced suggesting that talking points defending the photographs had allegedly been drafted before the images even appeared publicly. Now, nobody knows exactly who leaked that information. Nobody knows exactly where it started. But once the claim entered the conversation, it spread like wildfire. Because if true, it would mean Meghan's team wasn't reacting to criticism. They were anticipating it. And if they were anticipating it, then what exactly did they think people were going to say? That is where the alleged cover-up claims began. Not a cover-up of facts, a cover-up of optics, a cover-up of what critics claim was a carefully managed narrative.
Children are no longer just participants in digital spaces. They are too often the product. They didn't know that the platforms valued profit over people. We would never accept a food system that knowingly exposed children to harm.
But Meghan Markle, are you seriously saying, despite that rhetoric, that your 5-year-old daughter is giving you permission to share her image for money? I think there's nothing wrong with parents sharing their children online. But remember, Prince Harry has called it evil. He has attacked parents who are doing exactly what you would do.
Suddenly, every detail started looking different. The timing looked different. The wording looked different. Even the photographs themselves looked different. People who had originally viewed the images as harmless family moments began looking at them through an entirely different lens. And once that happened, the conversation became impossible to control. Because every time Meghan's representatives insisted privacy was being protected, critics pointed toward visibility. Every time the team insisted boundaries were being respected, critics pointed toward publicity. And the louder both sides became, the bigger the story grew. Then came the rumor that truly rattled observers. According to growing speculation, insiders allegedly feared that comparisons between the Geneva speech and the birthday photographs would create exactly the kind of controversy the Sussex camp desperately wanted to avoid. If that sounds familiar, it's because the entire internet was suddenly doing one thing: comparing speeches, comparing photographs, comparing messages, comparing actions. And those comparisons refused to disappear. The more people talked about them, the harder they became to ignore. That was the moment some royal watchers believe Meghan's team realized the story was slipping away from them. Not because of the pictures, because of the narrative surrounding them. Then came another unexpected twist. The alleged cover-up claims evolved. What started as whispers about pre-planned responses suddenly became whispers about image management. Critics began asking whether the entire strategy had been designed to soften Meghan's public image after months of difficult headlines. Were the photographs simply family memories, or were they part of something larger? That question became the center of the storm. And once people started asking it, they started connecting dots everywhere. Old interviews resurfaced. resurfaced. Past statements resurfaced. Previous social media posts resurfaced. Suddenly, years of headlines were being pulled back into the spotlight, and every single comparison added more fuel. The internet became obsessed because nothing captures attention faster than the possibility that somebody is trying to control a story. Whether true or false hardly mattered anymore. The perception alone was creating chaos. Meanwhile, inside royal circles, another question quietly emerged. If Meghan's team truly believed they were protecting Lilibet's privacy, why did so many observers walk away with the exact opposite impression? That contradiction became impossible to escape. And according to several commentators, it was that contradiction, not the photograph itself, that turned a routine birthday post into a full-blown controversy. Because once people believe they are seeing two different stories at the same time, trust begins to fracture. One version says protection. The other says promotion. One version says privacy. The other says publicity. And the louder those competing versions became, the more difficult it became for anyone to settle the argument. By now, the alleged cover-up claims were everywhere. Some called them ridiculous, others called them believable. But almost nobody ignored them. And that may have been the biggest problem of all. Because the moment a rumor becomes impossible to ignore, it gains a life of its own. The Sussex team could push back, supporters could defend, critics could attack, but none of them could stop people talking. And people were talking non-stop. The story was no longer about one birthday. It was no longer about one photograph. It was no longer even about one speech. It had become a battle over credibility itself, a battle over consistency, a battle over whether the public was seeing authenticity or strategy. And the deeper people dug, the more questions appeared. Questions that refused to go away. Questions that seemed to multiply every day. Questions that, according to some royal watchers, have left Meghan's team facing one of the most uncomfortable public relations moments of the year. Because once the word cover-up enters a story, everything changes. Every statement gets examined. Every photograph gets analyzed. Every silence becomes suspicious. And right now, according to the growing speculation surrounding this controversy, there are far more questions than answers. Once ordinary observers started comparing timelines, screenshots, statements, interviews, and photographs side by side, the conversation escaped the control of every spokesperson involved. That is the danger of modern controversies. They no longer live inside press releases. They live inside millions of phones. And once a narrative starts moving through social media, nobody gets to decide where it stops. That is exactly why the alleged cover-up claims have become so damaging. Not because anyone has produced some secret smoking gun. Not because there is proof of some giant conspiracy, but because the accusations fit into a larger pattern people think they recognize. And patterns are powerful, much more powerful than facts sometimes. Because people forgive mistakes. They do not forgive contradictions. That is why the debate keeps circling back to the same uncomfortable question. Why did the response feel prepared before the criticism even arrived? Why did the explanations appear so quickly? Why did the messaging seem so polished? Why did it look like the team already knew exactly which accusations were coming their way? Those questions continue hanging over the entire story. Meanwhile, another rumor has quietly gained momentum behind the scenes. Some royal commentators have begun speculating that the real crisis is not the photographs themselves. The real crisis is that Meghan's team allegedly underestimated how closely people would compare every public action against every previous public statement. For years, image management worked because audiences consumed information in isolated pieces. One interview here, one photograph there, one speech somewhere else. Not anymore. Now people place everything together. Every quote, every appearance, every Instagram post, every caption, every contradiction. And when they do, stories that once seemed separate suddenly become connected. That is precisely what happened here. The birthday photographs became linked to Geneva. Geneva became linked to social media. Social media became linked to privacy. Privacy became linked to publicity. And before long, an ordinary family post had transformed into a public debate stretching across multiple countries and media outlets. The alleged cover-up narrative exploded because people believed somebody was trying to manage those connections rather than answer them. Whether that belief is fair or unfair almost becomes irrelevant once enough people start repeating it. Then came the most uncomfortable development of all, the comparisons with Catherine. Not because Catherine said anything, not because Catherine attacked anyone, but because timing created a contrast that critics could not stop talking about. One royal figure was making headlines through carefully released family content. The other was making headlines through public engagements. And suddenly, people began treating those two approaches as competing symbols. Fairly or unfairly, the comparison spread everywhere. The more it spread, the harder it became for Meghan's team to redirect attention, because every attempt to explain one controversy seemed to generate 3 new conversations. And somewhere in the middle of all of this sits little Lilibet herself, the one person who never asked to become the center of an international debate, which is exactly why emotions around this story became so intense. Supporters argue Meghan is simply sharing family memories. Critics argue something more strategic is happening. Neither side appears willing to retreat, and every new discussion only deepens the divide. But perhaps the most revealing detail is not the photograph, not the speech, not the rumors, not even the alleged cover-up claims. It is the reaction, because reactions tell stories of their own. The reaction showed how quickly trust can become fragile. The reaction showed how closely audiences are watching. And the reaction showed that every future decision involving Harry, Meghan, Archie, and Lilibet will now be examined under a microscope far more powerful than before. That may be the true consequence of this entire saga. The story is no longer confined to one birthday post. It has become part of a much larger conversation about image, privacy, publicity, credibility, and control. And according to royal watchers, that conversation is only getting started. Because every controversy leaves something behind. This one left doubt. Doubt about motives, doubt about messaging, doubt about whether the public is seeing genuine family moments or carefully managed storytelling. And once doubt enters the picture, it rarely leaves quietly. That is why Meghan's team reportedly finds itself in such a difficult position today. The alleged cover-up claims may eventually disappear. The headlines may move on, the social media storm may fade, but the questions will remain. Questions that people continue asking long after the photographs stop trending. Questions that continue growing every time another statement appears. Questions that may follow this story for months. And perhaps that is what shocked Meghan's team the most. Not the criticism, not the backlash, not the headlines, but the realization that once people started connecting the dots for themselves, nobody could disconnect them again. And now the biggest mystery is no longer what appeared in the photographs. The biggest mystery is what happens next. Because if this controversy proved anything, it is that the public is paying closer attention than ever before. And somewhere behind palace walls, media offices, and Montecito gates alike, people know that the next chapter could be even bigger than the one we just witnessed.